All right, y'all, let's get started. I'm loving what's going on in the chat and keep it going if you want to continue the conversation. It looks like everybody is doing well, so that is exciting. So to introduce myself, my name is Rihanna Howard. I am the interim director for the African American Resource and Cultural Center, also known as ARC. And our workshop today is your identity in the workplace. So basically, from applying to starting a job, how have our panelists navigated their identity through each one of those process. I also want to highlight that this is a collaboration with the Career Center and with Alumni services. So I want to introduce Taylor and Valerie, if you want to spotlight and wave and say hello. Both of these folks are from the Career Center and I've spent a lot of time helping to plan this event. So if you want to just say hi and give a quick wave. Nice, thank you. And I also want to highlight Rhonda from Alumni Services, who's also been an extreme support with planning this event and getting and organizing each of our panelists for all of the 3C series events. So I just want to give a really big shout out to Rhonda as well. And so, yeah, just wanted to highlight both of the teams that are in collaboration with the Ethnic Resource Centers on all of our events this week. So thank you for being here. Today, we're going to start with a little bit of a welcome, do a land acknowledgement, talk about learning outcomes. We have a few poll questions, and then from there, we'll then head into the panel where we'll spend the majority of our time on. We have three amazing panelists who will be speaking with you today and sharing their experiences. And then after that, we'll have another set of poll questions, so please stick around, as well as including the contact information for our panelists if you want to continue the conversation. So first, I'm going to start with our land acknowledgement. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Perfect. So we would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Yupi tribe of the Waswas Nation. Today, these lands are represented by the Amamutsan tribal band, who are the descendants of the Waswas and Mutsun nations whose ancestors were taken to Mission Santa Cruz and Mission San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization of the Central Coast. Today, the Amamutsan are working hard to fulfill their obligation to their creator to care for and steward Mother Earth and all living things through the relearning efforts and the Amamutsan Land Trust. So I know that we are all in different spaces and not just in Santa Cruz, where this land acknowledgement is speaking for. So we're going to include a link into the chat. Melissa, thank you very much. If you can click on that link, you can actually look up the tribal affiliation of the land that you are currently resided on. So if you have the time, go ahead and click on there and include it into the chat so we can acknowledge and celebrate all the land that we reside on during this workshop. Cool, thank you. All right, next slide, please. Cool. So our learning outcomes today, so the conversation is going to consist of storytelling, tips and tricks, and feedback from the alumni who are on our panel, their experience navigating entering the workplace. So this is from applying to interviewing to starting and through their first years. So those are kind of the learning outcomes that we're going to hear about during this. Next slide, please. So to gauge kind of where you're at pre-conversation, we have 3 poll questions that we're going to ask of you. So if you click over twice, Valerie, it will upload all of the questions. So the first question is, how well would you describe your knowledge of what you may need to prepare for applying for a position? This is an open-ended question. And then, do you have any of the following professional documents or tools? So like an updated resume, a cover letter, a LinkedIn account. And then the last question is, how comfortable are you in networking settings and advocating for yourself? So we're going to activate these poll questions and take a few minutes for folks to answer. So it's about 4:08 right now. We'll take until about 4:12-ish to answer those. So I'm gonna mute and let y'all put your answers in. It looks like most folks have answered, but I'm gonna leave it open for about 2 more minutes just in case. I see a couple more coming in, so let's leave it open for 2 more minutes. Okay, perfect. Thank you all for participating in the poll. It looks like we have a pretty good variation on all of the questions. So after the panel, we'll go back and answer pretty similar poll questions to kind of gauge the learning that happens during the conversations. But I appreciate y'all participating in that. I also want to include that participating in the poll automatically includes you into a raffle for an iPad, which is part of participating in these workshops as well. So make sure that you are participating in the poll and that you did in fact register for the event as well. Cool. So next we're going to switch to the panel. In a second, I'm going to introduce our moderator, but I wanted to let you know that how we're going to do the panel is we're going to ask 3 questions. After those 3 questions, we're then going to open it up to for y'all to be able to ask questions by either unmuting your mic or by putting questions in the chat. And then if we have time, we'll then ask remaining questions as well too. So next slide, Valerie. Cool. So it is with excitement and honor to introduce you to Melissa Chamwaza, who is ARC's program coordinator and also the moderator for our panel today. So go ahead, Melissa.
Thank you, Rihanna, and thank you all for being here. I will briefly introduce myself. My name is Melissa, like Rihanna said. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the program coordinator for the African American Resource and Cultural Center. I'm really excited to be here with you all today. It's so exciting to see so many students present, ready to learn a bit more about how they can really set themselves up for great career readiness. And I think you have a lot to learn from our panelists. And so without further ado, I would like to invite all the panelists to introduce themselves. And I think I will start with Dr. Lakia, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. I literally was like, who is that? So hi, everyone. I'm Lakia Cherry. My day job, I'm a social worker and CEO of an organization called the Network for Social Work Management. I also just started my own coaching and consulting business. I graduated from UC Santa Cruz in 2004. I had a double major, which was psychology and legal studies, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lakia. Next, I'd like to invite Bill to introduce himself.
What's up, everybody? Good to be on here. My name is Bill Casher. I graduated UC Santa Cruz in 2000, and I studied biochemistry and molecular biology. Currently, I'm the director of laboratory operations at Gilead Sciences. So it's a pharmaceutical company in the Bay Area. We have a COVID treatment for that's called remdesivir, and kind of hot in the sciences now. But in any event, I have a team there that manages all the analytical equipment. So engineers and metrologists report into me and do all the maintenance and calibration of all the analytical equipment. I live in the Bay Area. I have my wife and 3 kids out here, and I still have ties to UC Santa Cruz because my sister is still staff on campus. So love the university, love all you guys being here, and I'm excited to speak with you guys today.
Thank you, Bill. And finally, I'd like to invite Dr. Sharon to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Sharon. I graduated from UC Santa Cruz back in 2015, so not so long ago. I just got my PhD in October of last year from the University of Iowa, and I'm now back in the Bay Area at a company, a biopharmaceutical company called Merck, working as a senior scientist here. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk to all of you guys and answer any questions that you may have.
Awesome. Thank you so much from all of our panelists for being here today and being open to sharing some knowledge and wisdom. So like Rihanna said, we're going to have 3 panel questions that we prepared for you all to hear from today, but also consider this time as you're listening and being present, a time that you can start to think about questions that you might have and develop. We invite you, once we get to that point, to unmic and mic up and speak to the panelists, but also if you prefer and feel more comfortable using the chat, we will also be moderating that closely and checking that. And so really highly encourage all of our students here today to take the opportunity to connect and find out those burning questions that you definitely have. We've all been there, and I know you've got those questions, so take the opportunity now to ask them. So just to get into it, our first question, if we can go to the next slide of questions, please. Thank you. Is what piece of advice would you give to a student who is about to graduate and is looking for experience in their field? And I can open that up to any of the panelists that would like to start.
I'll go first. The first most immediate piece of advice would be to have an updated resume. But then if you're looking for experience in your field, why wait until you graduate? Even if you do not intend to stay in Santa Cruz, you can research companies and organizations and institutions within the local area that are doing similar work, and you can contact them for informational interviews. You can also offer to volunteer or support them in some capacity. You can seek an internship. These are all things that can happen before you graduate, but you should also have an updated resume that is ready in order to kind of sell yourself and pitch yourself to them.
Yeah, that's good. I concur with all of that. I think it's so important to just really leverage your networks and kind of establish some connectivity with folks, you know, whether it's alumni, or you could go into LinkedIn, and if you're interested in a science company, see what UC Santa Cruz graduates are at that company, and just reach out to them like, hey, I'm an aspiring graduate of UC Santa Cruz. I'm trying to get in the field. I'd love to figure out what's a good way to get some experience at this organization, whether it's through an intern or what have you, and really leverage that resource of networking. And I know that does involve kind of putting yourself out there and being vulnerable maybe, but be secure and confident in that. You guys have worked so hard to get to this point in your schooling, and you deserve those opportunities, and people are going to acknowledge that for you. Also challenge all you guys, just get out of your comfort and get out of your spheres, because I think part of getting into those professional settings is it's always going to feel a little fish out of water. It's always going to feel a little uncomfortable. So You could already start getting outside of your immediate social spheres and maybe interacting with, a professor if you've never gone to an office hours, or maybe some of your staff and admins, or the folks who are on this call who are staff, to just maybe engage at a different level than maybe you are with your classmates and such, and really just expanding, those conversations, because that level of professionalism will, in conversation, will benefit you kind of in the longer run. So, couple thoughts.
Yeah, I don't have much to add except, absolutely 100% network. I remember when I was back in you guys' position, and people used to tell me that all the time, and I hated it so much, because it's like, what is even networking? Like, how do you put yourself out there? But kind of like what Bill said, like, it is pretty easy to network these days. LinkedIn is obviously a huge tool that you can use, and even Twitter. There's like academic Twitter or professional Twitter that you can use. But I know that ever since getting my position at Merck, there have been at least like 20 or 30 people who have already reached out to me, even though I'm new and I don't know what I'm doing. But they've already reached out to me to kind of say, hey, like, if there are any open positions, can you please let me know? And I'm always willing to send CVs out. And even today, I sent someone that I didn't even know. I sent his CV to my manager, and now my manager is going to talk to him. So it's really easy to network. Not everyone is going to be as responsive on LinkedIn, but just put yourself out there, like Bill said.
Wow, thank you all so much for those really brilliant insights. I have to really affirm everything they've said, y'all. For our students here, I'm a recent grad. Was very recently in your shoes and can tell you that like these informational interviews, networking is the key. I hope y'all trust that. We can move on to our next question, and that is, would you recommend a student attending grad school before they apply to a full-time position in their field? Why or why not? And I'm going to ask if our panelists can spend a little time talking about like how they made those decisions for themselves as well, outside of just like the general advice you would give. Like, how did you grapple with this decision?
So I start, because I didn't go to grad school and I didn't go to medical school or a professional school, but I think that's going to be different for everyone. It really is about wellness. I think after 4 years, or in some cases 5 as an undergrad at university, I was exhausted after graduating Santa Cruz. So studying biochemistry in that stage, being the expectations academically for that long, I felt like I needed a break. I know I grew up with a brother and sister in a pretty modest condo. So once I left for college, my mom had moved me out of my room as well. So I couldn't really go back home. So that wasn't an option. So I really did have to get into the workforce. And I kind of realized from a wellness perspective that really getting away from the academic setting was probably going to be a good thing for me. In the back of my mind, knowing that if I ever really did fully aspire later on, I could still go back to grad school. I could still go to the medical schools and things like that. But I toyed with it. I thought about it a little bit, but I really just kind of wanted to get into a larger sphere of social society. The campus life is it's different. It's just kind of a little different. And then there was a money motivation as well. And I think that's probably the biggest pitfall a lot of people have, is you kind of want to graduate and you want to get the check, you want to get the bag, you want to secure that already. But if it's not aligned with your passions and your wellness, you're not going to be happy anywhere. Even if you're getting a big check, you're not going to be fully well and happy. So if your passion is academic and research, and you thrive in a highly knowledgeable and around the type of thought that happens at a university, that's a good place to gravitate towards. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Love to hear from the other 2.
So I can go next. So like I said, I just graduated, so obviously I went to graduate school. But I actually applied to both industry positions and grad school when I was finishing up. And I knew I wanted to end up in industry. I knew I didn't want to be a professor and stay in academia, but I didn't want to close that door either. And for me, it really was just, I got more interviews through academia than I did through industry. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm choosing academia. And I will say it was like the best decision I could have made. The amount of training and just growing that I, had the opportunity to do as a scientist was just, it's unmatched. And You know, if I had to do it again, I would. The money aspect is hard, obviously, with grad school, but that was actually a decision that I wanted to make because I didn't want to go to industry and make a lot of money and then end up going back to, you know, grad school and not make any money. And so I was like, I'd rather, you know, like not make any money in college and then make a tiny bit of money in grad school and then make all the money in industry. So that's something you can consider too if you know, kind of, if you're grappling or, you know, like trying to decide between both, just know that it's going to be a very hard transition going from industry to grad school because you make next to nothing in grad school. But yeah, I think it's honestly, like Bill said, it's like a personal decision and basically just what you want to get out of your growth and out of your career. If you know that, and this isn't, obviously it's never a linear path, it's never the same for everyone, but in my experience and from what I've heard, if you don't do higher education, if in grad school or medical school or something like that, it's harder to move up the ladder in industry. So they typically do want PhDs or at least masters and those types of degrees in order to get those, you know, director, VP positions. And it's just a lot harder to do that without that higher degree. So that's also something to consider.
Okay, the only other thing I'd really add is it really depends on the person as well as the field that you're going into. For me, my path was a little bit more unique because I thought I was going to become an attorney. And so immediately after I graduated, I went to law school and I was in law school a couple months in and I hated it. I could not stand it. And so I had to decide, do I go get a job or do I come up with another career path? And so the law school that I had chose had a JD and a MSW program. And I enrolled because I wanted to be a social worker and an attorney. And so when I decided to leave law school, I decided I would then go get my master's in social work. So while I was in law school, I began applying for graduate school. So I applied for Columbia School of Social Work to get my master's in social work. But when I left law school, I had to get a real job to sustain myself before graduate school started. And at that point, because I had always intended to get my advanced education before getting more work experience, I realized that with my psychology degree, this is many years ago, it was very difficult to get a decent paying job just with my bachelor's degree. So I was so fortunate that I had been accepted into a master's program. Then when I was in my master's program, I received on-the-job training. With a social work master's, you have to have internships. So you're working within organizations for a set amount of time where you're getting practical experience. And so I got my master's in social work, but then I started my career, and similar to what Sharon was saying, I realized that I needed a certain number of years of advanced experience in the field before I could move up the leadership ranks. But then even once I moved up, in order to have a certain level of credibility within my field and be respected, then a doctorate degree might be something worth considering. And so I just graduated with my doctorate in social work last year, and I was already a CEO, but it added so much more credibility to what I was doing. So I think with this question, you really have to think about yourself. Wellness is extremely important. So do you need a break? What are your finances? Can you afford to take a break? What are your end goals? But also do research so that you're not bouncing all over the place, but know that it's a personal decision and everyone's path is going to be completely different.
Thank you again to all of our panelists. I'd also like to encourage our participants tonight to use the chat while they're here. I know we invited you to use the chat to ask questions, but also feel free to affirm and thank. You can use the reactions. It's so nice to hear from such diverse and interesting backgrounds, and I think it's really great to hear all the different paths a person can take. We can move on to our third and final questions for this round, and then we're going to move on to the audience questions for a bit after that. But the third question we have right now is, what are some of the best practices when preparing for an interview?
I'll start. I recently hired a new assistant, so I have some recent experience with this. I'd say the number one thing, as you're applying, keep track of where you're applying and why. I interviewed so many people who forgot who our organization was, what we did. They did not understand our work. It was so obvious that they had not even looked at our website. They were telling me that we worked with the homeless and we worked with children, and they had all these ideas where it was obvious they were making it up, and it was completely opposite of what we did. And so definitely do your homework, research the organization, and that its mission, its vision, and its values are in alignment with you and your interests, but then keep track of it. That's so important. Keep track of it so that when you get in an interview, you know who you're talking to and why, and you remember why you actually applied. So that's the first thing.
Definitely, oh, go ahead. Okay. Definitely echo all of that. I can only speak from I have just interviewed part of it, and I only actually interviewed at Merck, so I didn't interview at a lot of places. But what I can say with my recent interview and with my graduate school interviews is, it sounds silly and it's really weird, but what a lot of people told me is that they loved that I smiled a lot. And so it's a very small thing, and I promise you by the end of the day, your cheeks will be hurting and red, and you'll be so tired of smiling. You won't even know if you're smiling or not, but it's so important to smile because that just comes across as you're a friendly person and you actually really want this job. So it's a very small piece of advice, but that's the advice I always give people, because that's the feedback I always get is, oh yeah, I remember you. You were super cheery during your interview. And I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, that's a random piece of advice.
Like 100 to that. I think just what you exude as a person is so important in the interview, you know, your essence. And if you're a happy person and excited about the role, it will be obvious when you're there, as opposed to like what Lakia has mentioned, where why am I here? Like, you don't even know too much about the role. But I think it is also important to just, and it was mentioned, but really do look into the company and their core values. So you will see that they outline all that in their website. So it could be integrity and accountability and teamwork, excellence. Like, these are different, this is their framework of who they are as an organization. And they will ask questions that point to those different attributes. So if it's teamwork, maybe have a story in your back pocket of where you worked collaboratively with others, even organizing on campus or whatever that might look like. If it's accountability or integrity, maybe just, they might ask you like, where was there a time where you had to make a decision that was against your core values maybe? And, you know, like, how did you handle that? How did you reconcile that? So have like kind of think about those responses and have kind of instances or stories or narratives to some of those kind of pointed like integrity questions, you know, personality questions. A lot of companies now, they have diversity and inclusion as part of their core values. Like, they're really trying to be an inclusive organization that emphasizes diversity to drive innovation and to drive, you know, how we create our products. And if you're a person of color and you're a diverse person, man, press into that. Like, really embrace that about yourself and feel emboldened by that, you know, and like say that that's what you're passionate about, and that's who you are, and just allow your full self to be seen. And if it comes across with a smile, like Sharon said, I think that's a perfect package. It really is.
Oh, wonderful. I'm every time. And I'm actually going to be a little self-serving right now because I want to remix this question really quick. I would like to know if any of y'all have any tips or experiences from group interview settings as well.
I don't, so I'm gonna let y'all take that.
Yeah, I've been in quite a few groups. Those are scary. They're incredibly nerve-wracking, and It's kind of hard to prepare for that, to be perfectly honest. But I think one thing you can do is before you come on campus or to the company for an interview, you'll get a list typically of interviewees or who's going to be interviewing you. Do your Googles, go on to LinkedIn, see who the people are in the room, what their roles are, and how they probably fit into this panel conversation. I think it's important when you're in a panel to acknowledge everybody there. So in our nervousness, we might just speak to the back of the room, or we might speak to a individual who's the most comfortable looking in the room, but allow yourself to kind of look across the table and make a connection with everyone, because it's not always what you say technically, but just how you're nonverbal is so important, I think, in panel interviews. Like I mentioned, like it came across your essence, your smile. Like a lot of the nonverbal is so important in interviews. And if you're here and scared, it's gonna show. And so just allow yourself to relax, whatever relaxing looks like for you in that space. Yeah, hope that helps.
Super, super helpful. Yeah, group interviews terrify me. I was like, now's my chance to find out some information. So thank you for that. Now, it's so exciting. We've got questions coming in on the chat, and I'm going to, they're in the chat, but I think the way I would like to structure this for now is y'all continue to put them in the chat, and I will ask for now. And then if we get through these, I will invite any brave souls who might want to unmic to do that then. So for now, our first question comes from Aya, and they would like to know, what is the difference between a resume and a CV? What do these words mean?
A CV is more academic. It's a curriculum vitae. And a CV usually has all of your speaking engagements, whether you've presented somewhere, whether you have published, it's multiple pages, whereas your typical resume, in the past, they used to say it should be 1 page, but nowadays it's more so 2 or 3 pages. A curriculum vitae sometimes is 10, 15, 20 pages. Many of my board members, for example, they have tons of publications. And so their vita is literally listing every single article they've written, every blog, every book they've written, every single speaking engagement. And a CV is typically needed in academic institutions. So if you're applying to be a professor or to be staff somewhere, but most jobs are fine with just the resume.
Very helpful. Thank you so much. Our next question comes from Yesenia. And Yesenia wants to know, when should graduating seniors start applying for jobs? How much time should students give themselves if they would like to be hired right after graduation? And keeping in mind that for most UC students, that time is around June.
So I can take this one since I kind of went through the job application process. I would say start as early as possible. So you want to be networking just from day one, really, but as soon as you can. So, you know, like with the ways that we've already established and said before, also talking to professors and really just trying to get your name out there and get as many names as possible. The problem with applying for jobs the traditional way is, and I, have experienced this myself, but then a bunch of friends who have applied for jobs online, as well as my husband who's currently applying for jobs. When you go through the online application process, it usually just sits there for a while, at least for biotech companies or pharmaceutical companies. They'll usually sit there for a while, then it may go to HR, then it may, go to this person or that person. And it can just kind of be in limbo. So, one, you may not hear back at all, but 2, it may take, 2 to 3 months to hear back in the first place. And then you have to go through the interview process, which takes a couple months and all this stuff. And so it typically takes a while when you're going through the kind of the traditional route. And I put air quotes around the traditional route because I feel like I've learned now that the more traditional route is actually through networking. So basically, like I mentioned, me sending someone's CV to my manager and my manager directly reaching out to that person and then offering him an interview in 2 days and then letting him know in 2 weeks whether or not he has a job. And that's how I've learned that a lot of jobs are actually filled these days. And it's interesting because that's kind of the route I took, where my boss knew my former boss knew my current boss. And so I got in contact with him that way. And what ended up happening is he ended up creating a position for me here at Merck, but legally they have to post the job online. And they have to interview 2 other candidates, knowing that they already gave me a job, but legally they have to do this. And so while some poor soul, and I felt really bad about this, but some poor soul probably applied for that job online, and they're over there sitting like waiting to hear back or thinking like, hey, I might have a job, when that job is already filled. And so applying the traditional route through online applications can be a little bit risky. I'm not saying that you're not going to get a job that way, but it may take a little bit longer. So all that to say is build your network, obviously, and that may quicken the process. But then also give yourself a little bit of time if you are just going to go through the traditional route. So I would say, to answer the question directly, maybe give yourself like at least 6 months before you graduate to, try and secure a job.
I just wanted to add a quick point to what Sharon was saying. I agree with the 6 months in advance, but oftentimes people of color miss opportunities to get jobs because of the backdoor networking that takes place. And so fortunately it worked out in her favor, but it oftentimes don't work out for BIPOC individuals, which heightens the necessity for all of you to be networking. And so knowing that we're here, that there's so many Banana Slug alumni from throughout the world, that there are platforms such as Twitter and LinkedIn, it would definitely benefit you now, even if you're not applying, to begin expanding your network so that you're not overlooked and or applying for something where they already have someone slotted for that position.
Really excellent feedback, y'all. Thank you so much. We've got tons of questions, so I'm going to go with the next one. Emily wants to know, and I'm assuming this is in an interview setting. Emily, if that's incorrect, feel free to use the chat to correct. But they want to know, what should someone do if they're naturally just kind of fidgety or are having a hard time sitting still?
I can take that one because I'm fidgety. I don't know if you've seen me, I've been like kind of doing this. Practice not being fidgety. Like my PI had to beat that into me just because I, do a lot of this when I'm presenting, and he was like, you need to practice presenting first of all, and when you do, you need to hold still and, not move around. So, I mean, it's natural, especially when you're nervous. So just practice, practice, practice.
Thank you. Would you like to add to that, Dr. Lakia?
I just put into chat like grounding and breathing exercises. So if you know this about yourself, then beforehand, I don't know if you've heard of, what is it, like the warrior pose or whatever that pose is, where you're practicing being confident, but then also you're taking time to just do box breathing and other meditation-like exercises to calm yourself before you actually engage with the interview.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest, because this season of life where we're all on Zoom and on camera is helpful in some ways, because you kind of you have self-awareness. You sort of know what you look like and sound like on camera. Because one thing I was gonna suggest is actually video yourself interviewing or talking at length, not just something that you're comfortable about, but maybe something that you're maybe not as well versed at. Because I know I have a nervous habit where I say, like I fill every sentence with, and then when I play it back and I listen to it, I'm like, holy cow, that sounds terrible. Like everything, so you'll catch those little things about your speech habit, or sometimes it's a fidget, and then it's like what the ladies mentioned, just the intentionality of practicing and working out of that, counteracting that.
Thank you. Yes, I think those are all invaluable. I also, Emily, I see you. I am also a nervous, fidgety person. You're valid. It's not just you out there. So I definitely advise you to take all our panelists' advice into consideration and see how you can be your best and most comfortable self. April would like to know, they're concerned that the cost of grad school seems really unmanageable and really daunting. And I want to know if you all have any advice for figuring out funding sources or managing that cost, if you're worried about that.
So if you do a science PhD, they pay you. So there's no cost to you whatsoever, which was the attractive part for me. You actually get paid a stipend. Granted, it's not much, but it's livable depending on where you live, AKA why I went to the Midwest and lived in Iowa for the last 5 years. I actually, was able to save up money. I bought a house and, I was able to live comfortably. Obviously, if you're doing a PhD in California or New York or, any of those states on the coast, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, just cost of living, but they usually will pad your stipend a little bit to compensate for that. So for science track PhD, you're good. You don't have to pay, they pay you.
And there's, I think there's a lot of resource out there too in terms of grants and things. I mean, even as an undergrad, I was a MARC fellow. So back then it was at Santa Cruz, Minority Access to Research Careers, where my last 2 years were tuition was paid and I got a stipend as well. And you're not balling, you know what I mean? You don't have like a lot of money, but you could pay to feed yourself and to a roof over your head and things like that. But, we have a new administration now. I think there's going to be a lot of grants for people like ourselves, and pay attention to what's happening at that level and what's available out there. The NIH has a lot of grants in the sciences that just goes untapped. Like people don't actually apply into and take advantage of those resources. So, and you could, and I don't know, I have a good friend, Keith Curry, he's an alumni of Santa Cruz. He writes grants, academic grants, and he taught people how to advocate for themselves. This is what I want to study. This is why it's important in this community. Would you be willing to support me in some capacity in doing that? And write a grant for yourself and just be fully self-empowered that way. And that all just supplements the graduate effort or your graduate school or your professional school effort. So, some other thoughts.
I'd add just apply for scholarships. And then if you did decide to work first, some employers have, they have built-in support if you want additional education. And so some employers will pay for you to go to grad school. But it is daunting. I mean, admittedly, I'm still paying for my master's education. However, for my doctoral education, I worked at a tech startup company, which helped pay for that education, which was a benefit. But I think one of the main things, if you want to do it, you'll figure it out. But then even if you do get loans or what have you, make sure you don't get too much and make sure that you plan to get a job that is going to allow you to pay back those student loans. Oftentimes people will begin collecting degrees without any full plan to start working and making a livable wage where they can support themselves and pay back that debt. And so just be mindful of that, because also predators tend to take advantage of BIPOC people.
Thank you all again. I hope our students here are feeling more confident and like just assured that you got this, y'all. So we have about 2 more questions from the chat that I fielded. And then from there, I'd like to leave a little space for any students who want to just unmic and talk to y'all a little more face-to-face, we'd like to say. And then if we still have some free time, we'll do a couple more prepared questions that we've got. And so our next question comes from Bianca, and they would like to know what you all think. Is a cover letter or a resume more important when applying to a position?
I like cover letters. I read those first because for me, you need to be able to write. And so this gives me a clue as to how you think, how you write, how you sell yourself, what you know about our organization, why you want to work for us. So that is the first thing. And then a good point regarding that, a lot of organizations and companies will request a cover letter and a resume or CV, and many people will only submit the resume or CV. So please pay attention to the instructions and the details and give them what they're asking, because I know when I was hiring, everyone who didn't do what I asked, immediately I didn't consider those applications. And so I think they both have weight, but I actually read the cover letter first to get interest before I study the resume.
Yeah, I agree. I think coming from where you guys are at, because the resume is not going to be too long at this point, as just being in school. So the cover letter really does speak to your intentionality. It's what are your intentions in applying for this role, and it does get a little bit more personal. I think maybe year 10 in your career, year 15, or what you have on your resume as it speaks more specifically your professional experience to those positions. Maybe your resume is more relevant at that time, but I think initially the CV is very important.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And our final question from the chat comes from Lou. And I know we touched on this a little bit, but I think if you all could offer some just affirmations or any other additional wisdom that you might have, what should a student do if they're trying to apply for a job, but they don't have much experience outside of just school-related things?
I would say apply anyways. You don't count yourself out. You never know. And just, you can always start today trying to build your resume with the outside work school experience. But you can get creative in the things that you put on your, resume or CV without lying. I was involved in my church for a while, for 4 years when I was in Santa Cruz, and I was the youth ministry pastor, whatever, the music person. See, I don't even know anymore. But the point is, I embellished on that a lot on my resume, and I don't know if that helps or not, but it's those little things where it's like extracurricular, you're doing it anyways. I wasn't, going to church for, putting it on my resume, but I found that and I put it on my resume. So become creative, but also just start today and apply anyways.
Yeah, I would say just be encouraged. You're the person for that role, because I think it's important to obviously apply into the expectation. You're probably not going to come out of college and apply for a CEO position or a VP position or a director, right? It's not like, there's somebody you like out there and you're going to shoot your shot. It doesn't work like that in the professionals. You really want to look for an entry-level position, and the hiring managers are looking for that. They're understanding that somebody's going to be applying without a lot of relevant experience to this position. So again, it's going to speak more to your personality, your intentionality with that role, what you know about the company. You're going to be evaluated more on those things than on your merit or your professional experience or your work experience or organizing experience as it points directly to that role. That will help more form how they think about you, but really ultimately it's going to be your personality, your enthusiasm for that role, your knowledge of the company. I think those are the attributes that are going to really make you stand out for those entry-level positions. And just know those positions are for you guys. They're not for somebody who has 10 years experience. They want somebody who's going to come in and have aspirations and have that energy and enthusiasm. They're writing those positions for you guys. So feel encouraged to apply and put yourself out there.
I agree. The only thing I'd add is your community involvement, whether it's church or what have you, your student involvement, those all translate to skills that you've learned that would fit within any workplace. So look at the job descriptions, and if you are part of a student organization and you're planning events, you're an event planner. If you post on social media, you're a marketer. And so really translating those things that you're doing to fit the job description, but then also knowing that you're enough and similar to what Bill was saying, your personality, if you let it shine, that oftentimes will be something that gets you the job before someone who's dry or dull, who has a more elaborate resume, because people are looking for people that they want to work with and that they feel will be a good, I hate this term, culture fit. And so if your personality is shining, you're friendly, you show an eagerness to learn, a desire to learn, but also passion and commitment for that org and their work, then that is going to resonate so much more than someone who's boring, but who has done so many unique things. So keep that in mind. You, who you are, is good enough and worthwhile for the jobs that you identify as a fit for you.
And I just want to add, because I saw Lou's comments, she said, she or he, sorry, I don't know. It's the 1 to 2 years of experience for a job labeled entry level that gets me down sometimes. And I just want to say that for the job that I currently had, they said that they wanted 2 to 3 years of a postdoc position or experience in industry. And I had literally just, actually I hadn't even gotten my PhD yet. And I still got it. They typically say that just to kind of scare you away, so kind of what you're saying. And I mean, that's what my director said anyways. And he, like I said, he created this job for me, but he still put that on the listing. So don't let that deter you. Apply anyways. And, you know, worst case scenario, you don't get the job and you're in the same position. So.
Yeah, I really appreciate you all. This has been really affirming and uplifting. I think even for a person who's in a professional position, it's just nice to hear people of color, Black people say, like, you're valid, you're worthy of these jobs, you're just as qualified. And I hope all these students, like, I hope you can internalize that and trust that. So far, we have one student who has a question, and I would invite any students who also would like to ask questions in this time, go ahead and like raise your hand and I can call on you, and we'll start with Emily.
Hi, so I had a question and it was about the publications you mentioned. If we like to write and we, for example, send submissions to like the school newspaper, or if we've won competitions, but they're not large scale, they're just like school published things, would that be okay to put on a resume, or does that look kind of like too pathetic?
No way, add it. Definitely not pathetic. You did it. You received recognition. I would highlight all of that, like literally highlight all of it. But you also made a good point. If there's things that you've posted or that you've written that you don't want to be seen, make sure you all clean up your social media profiles and what have you as you are entering the job market. But with regards to what you're asking, Emily, definitely add it, because that it matters and it's valid, especially if it connects to the job that you're seeking.
Yeah, I think you guys got to, you guys are university students. Like, you guys are already at a whole different level than even a lot of folks who apply into some of these places. So when you're writing at a university, even for a newspaper, you're in a different sphere, you know, and just know that about yourself. Like, that's dope to be there. you're at a whole different level, and step into that. That's who you are, and own that. It's not anything to be discouraged about. I think that stuff should absolutely go on there, and you should be proud about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any other students that would like to mic up right now and have any questions they've been saving for our panelists?
I do have a question. And my question is that I have done several research projects in my undergraduate classes. And do you think that it's worth to put on the resume, even though I'm not on my CV, but just apply to a job? If I think that's relevant, because I think that that shows my skill set, but it's not academic setting.
So is this for like the research projects you did, was it for a class or was it like an independent, you were in a research lab?
It's kind of like my senior seminar, for example.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I would think maybe as it relates to the role, you know, if you think, and like, hey, she mentioned this, you know, about you guys could make those connections, and they might not be obvious, but you could connect them, you know. So maybe some of the skills that you learned in that research is requirements gathering, or just getting information, collecting information, and being able to articulate it. You know, you could package that into something that is exactly what they're asking for in this job. So it's really just kind of thinking outside of the box of some of your academic experiences and framing it in a way that it speaks directly to that role, and then being comfortable talking about it. So when they ask, when you reference it as like, hey, I did this and it relates to that, have a story for it, and be able to explain why you loved doing that and why you feel like you kicked butt in doing it and what you learned about yourself and maybe others in that experience, and then you kind of round it all the way out.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Okay. Hi, my name is India Eubank, and I'm majoring in business. And my goal is to get into graphic design and marketing. And I have a question about just what would you recommend in terms of getting more into the field and getting that experience? And like, I'm thinking of looking for summer internships or that kind of stuff, or just reaching out. But what do you recommend in terms of that field, I guess you would say? Because I feel like you need more knowledge, or you have to be able to already graphic design, which I have like beginner experience in, but what would you recommend in general, just in terms of networking and just getting more experience in that field?
I'd start building mini portfolios. So if it's graphic design, like these guys talked about church, every Sunday they have church pamphlets, you know, and they might have a logo in the front of it, or and then they'll flip it next week and do a different, or maybe in a month they'll do a different series and they'll have a different picture on it, and they'll need somebody to help them with those graphics. A lot of churches might not have that, so you could offer that service to them, and now you're building a little bit of portfolio. Like, I have these 4, you know, graphic designs I did for these people, or I know like a lot of folks have aspirations like, man, I'm really trying to start this t-shirt company or something, like, man, let me work on a logo for you. let me create something for you, and start just building in like your own personal content and your own sort of resume, and your own portfolio, and just by just offering services where there might be kind of similarities of what they're interested in and what you can maybe provide. Or partner with somebody who you know who, well, that might be a little harder, just finding a graphic designer and say, hey, could I do some prep work for you? Or can I do some just your pre-final product? Just offering yourself, putting yourself out there and offering those services, it can maybe get you in the door and start creating some content for yourself.
Thank you.
I agree. I would add that there are sites such as Canva. And so while it's not too sophisticated, you could utilize something like Canva to begin playing around with making flyers and memes and videos and other things to start building your portfolio. But then, similar to what Bill said, you can identify companies where it looks like perhaps they could use some refreshed marketing and branding, and you could utilize your business skills to pitch to them that you're willing to do some of these things in kind or at a low cost in order to build your portfolio, but also to say that you worked with this company or this person. There's also sites such as Catch-a-Fire, where freelancers who are starting to kind of build their brand and get projects, they can volunteer to do work for free for different organizations and companies or at a low cost, so that they're getting more visibility. Another site would be Fiverr. I know you haven't been through formal training, but once you get a little bit more training or experience utilizing Canva or other tools, these are things that would assist you. For beginning experience, I would outreach to local designers and perhaps some alum who have this experience and get recommendations, or see if they'd be willing to let you have an internship or learn from them a few things. Also YouTube, Coursera, there's all these free sites available that teach you things without you having to pay for it.
Great, thank you so much.
Any other students with questions? We have about 20 more minutes, and we really want to encourage y'all to network, like we said earlier, you know, put your face out there, and also just get the questions you need answered, you know, the time is now.
Hello, I'm Aya. I'm a psychology major, and I don't really know like what I want to do exactly. I know I'm interested in like clinical work, but I'm also interested in sort of the intersection of like psychology and like criminal justice law stuff. I guess, do you have any advice on kind of like, I guess, figuring out what you want to do in life and yeah, if anyone has any advice on like, I don't really know how much stuff there is out there for like psychology law things together, because it's not really, I guess, super commonly talked about. So yeah, just any advice on those things.
I would be patient and know that my grandfather used to always say, you have to crawl before you can walk. And so when I was in school, I immediately thought like, oh, I'm going to just be this human rights attorney like right away. And I'm getting this job. I got my bachelor's. This is the next step immediately. And if I shared my full path, I've done so many things along the way that I never thought I would have career-wise, but it all gave me new skills and new experiences that contributed to my current role and how I lead and how I think about things. And I've been out of school with my master's for over 13 years. I've been a CEO for over 7 years, and I'm still trying to figure out what exactly it is that I want to do. And so know that you're always going to transition within different periods of your life, and that's okay. It's normal. Now I'm more interested in entrepreneurship, but 5 years ago, no way, I never would have considered that. And so just really be patient and know that you need to really acquire some foundational skills now and build your network. And eventually you'll find a path that you want to be on. And it might be for many years, or it might be just for a few years.
That's good. I would embrace being dynamic that way, because the professional environment doesn't always lend to how dynamic we are as people. So you mentioned you have legal interest and then psychology. So maybe you get in as a paralegal just to get into a law firm and kind of see what the law firm, how it operates. But it might be your side kind of gather or organizing with a group, or your pro bono work that kind of feeds your soul from the psychology side, you know, whether it's a cohort of folks or just organizing. But don't settle for, you know what, I got this job and this is what I do and this is what I am. You know, ultimately you have to be your full self always, and allow yourself to kind of expand into different areas that, you know, maybe this isn't a paid endeavor, but I'm feeding my soul and I'm learning a little bit more in that space, to where it'll ultimately come back around and connect into a perfect job, you know. But like he mentioned, I was chuckling because I'm literally still trying to figure out what I want to be doing, you know. Like I think I'm at a stage even in my career and in my life where I'm looking back like, how can I be helping you guys, you know. Like I meet with a bunch of alumni on Tuesday nights just talking about that very thing. Like, what are we doing as professionals in not reaching back up and helping folks, and how do we kind of make those connections? So it's an evolution. You know, we're all a work in progress, and you're probably going to feel that way for your career, and that's okay. You know, it's okay to feel that way.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Yeah, really, really insightful. I'm glad I know that I don't have to have it figured out. That takes some weight off. We've got a question from Lou.
Hello. So can you all hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So my question has to do with looks, I suppose. As you can see, I have very bright neon green hair, and I'm a person who likes to express myself through body mods. So I have like gauges and piercings. Is this something that y'all notice still has a pretty like negative stigma towards in like the professional environment, or is it starting to like loosen up still, and like as long as you can do your work and that's more valued over like the way that you look?
I can say that, you know, obviously as the world is getting more progressive, companies and, you know, different universities are as well. And so I know that our company really values just diversity as a whole, not just black, white, but, you know, like just everything that you can bring to the table. But that all that to say is that not everyone is like that, right? And so you may be meeting with someone, you may have an interview with someone who doesn't believe that. And so obviously it's a touchy subject and it's tricky to navigate, but just know that, you know, even if you're interviewing with someone who is, you know, bringing that negative energy because of the way you look, that's probably not where you want to be anyways, right? And so I would say be your full self. Don't try and hide yourself from, you know, like just to be normal or, you know, like be what you think people expect you to be. Just come how you are, and if they accept you, that's great. That's probably somewhere you want to be. And if they don't, then that's probably somewhere, you know, that it's going to be toxic to your kind of your growth as a employee. So yeah, I would say come as you are.
Thank you.
That's definitely tough because there'll be environments that are more that take that more into consideration than others. You know, just different professional environments. I find as being a black male in the sciences, that was a stigma enough. So I think initially, I don't want to have my tattoos all out all the time. You know, and you kind of like button up a little bit, and you maybe code switch here and there because you just kind of want to fit in. But if you're not well, if it doesn't make you well, then you're just fronting and you're not going to be a happy person. So I think ultimately you got to kind of operate in your comforts, but understanding that in some capacity it may require that you kind of that you fall back a little bit, you know, or not change your look entirely, but just maybe be a little bit more conservative in how you do it and not fully express yourself right out the gate, but maybe more when you kind of establish a rapport and in a relationship within an organization, because I just don't want to just front like it's all good. You know, sometimes people do look at that and consider it and think differently. So yeah, I hope that gives you a different some perspective. And
I agree with both perspectives. It's interesting because I often tell people, similar to what Sharon was saying, like you should be who you are, but know that you being who you are might not get you the job at where you want the job, but you shouldn't change who you are. You still, if you don't want to conform or code switch or whatever for this place, then don't do it. But know that certain places might not let you in. And so I don't know what industry you're interested in. Certain industries are more open, they're more inclusive. They want people to fully express themselves. I know with my profession, there's people with gauges and multiple colored hair and tattoos, and my profession openly appreciates and welcomes that type of expression. I know with art and design, the more creative professions. But if you're trying to get this corporate job or be this attorney over here, it might be a little bit more difficult. But if that is your interest, still persist. My partner, he's an attorney of many years and he has long locks. So long locks down his back, and he wears it in man buns and what have you, and he's going to be a judge. And that's part of who he is, and it definitely stands out, but he's not cutting his locks for anyone. So definitely do you, but know that some will exclude you, but you don't want to be there anyways.
And kind of to add to that and to mend my original statement a little bit, I will say that, I mean, I know a lot of people of color go through it. So like for myself, whenever I go through interview processes, like I always straighten my hair, and it's wrong and I shouldn't do it and I shouldn't care about what they think about my hair, but I don't want to be that girl who has the nappy hair. I don't want that to influence them hiring me. And as you can see now, my hair is natural, natural and not straight. So I kind of come in a different way just to secure the bag. And then, now I'm my full self and they can't fire me for having my hair natural. So you may want to consider, obviously like come as you are, but like Lakia was saying, some people are not going to like that. So maybe cover up a little bit in the interview process, get the job, secure the bag, and then, come exactly how you want to be.
Great, thank you so much for your input.
Thank you, panelists. We can go ahead with Isabella, and then that might be, maybe after that we can have one, maybe more student question, and then we'll be close to wrapping up. So go ahead, Isabella. Hey, Isabella, it's actually, we can hear you, but it's super, super faint. Are you able to get closer to the mic at all? And if not, we can also utilize the chat if you feel comfortable doing that. We'll give you a second. All right, we're just gonna give Isabella a quick second to get that in the chat, and I'll read it out loud. But yeah, Dr. Sharon, I really appreciated that. Like that secure the bag. I feel like that's my essence. And I've seen some really good TikToks about like people like me in the interview code switching, and then me on the first day like rips off the wig. And I love that, like
exactly.
Do what you
in grad school, it took me a couple months to rip it off, and literally here it took me like 2 days, and I was like, all right, well, this is me.
It's me.
So.
I love that. Thank you. All right, Isabella, I see you saying go ahead. If you manage to get it in the chat, I'll be on the lookout for it. For now, we have one last question from our ARC team, and it's kind of a heavy hitter, but I feel like you all can possibly speak to it really well. We want to know, has imposter syndrome played a role in you navigating your professional academic journeys?
1000%. Even till today, I'm like, should I be here? It is very hard being a Black woman who is a scientist because I don't see a lot of people who look like me. And 99% of the time, I'm the only person that looks like me in any space. In my graduate program, it was me and one other girl in the sea of like 50 or 60 other white people. And so it's very easy to, get bogged down with just like, I don't think I should be here. I don't belong here. And I know a lot of people struggle with that just regardless, even, white, Black, whoever you are, you struggle with it just because, like that's just the nature of the game. But being a person of color, it makes it even harder. And I think that it has to be a conscious decision every day for you to say, when you ask yourself that question, like, should I be here? I shouldn't be here. You have to remind yourself, yeah, I belong here just like everyone else belongs here. I've, paid my dues, I've worked hard, I've, stayed up all night studying, I've gotten a PhD. Like, what more can I do to belong here? But yeah, I would say 100%. I struggle with that all the time. But one way to combat that is just reminding yourself that yes, you do belong here, and you wouldn't be here if you didn't. So.
I agree. I suffer from imposter syndrome, and I began to embrace it and talk about it, which gives it less power, but also allows me to connect with others a lot more about it. Once I've learned more about systems and the way our world and our country was designed and research imposter syndrome, it's allowed me to see how the system wasn't designed for me and how it will, if I don't take control of my narrative and my self-talk, then I'm going to hold myself back and already I'm being pulled down. And so now, even when I'm looking at a job opportunity or I'm thinking, I don't know, for me, it's an act of bravery and courage to say, well, still gonna try. And so that is something that I'm very, very intentional with, where, yeah, I'm scared, I'm fearful, but I'm the person holding myself back if I don't try or put myself out there, so.
It's almost impossible to operate in some of these professional spaces where people don't look like you and don't have life experiences like you and don't share commonality in a lot of ways with you, and you will experience that inevitably. I think it's just kind of the fact of the matter, and you do have to be a very secure person and kind of create a community for yourself. I think it's important to be able to retreat from those emotions and have a contingent of folks who do look like you and do speak like you, do support you, and who can affirm you, right? And who can say, man, my day was like that too, and know that you're not alone. Because I think where I was wrong initially is you try to work harder and prove that you belong, you need to be there, and you try to overachieve to, I'll show them, and it's not really about that, because you're really just compromising your own wellness and self. It's about doing your job to the fullest and letting your just natural self excel and achieve. Because what a lot of these organizations are starting to realize is that diversity is important, and where a lot of these maybe non-Black and such folks are fail to realize prior is you're not innovating as an organization if you're not inclusive, and you're not really moving the needle even financially if you're not hiring people, women, people of color, like all across the spectrum. And that's historical, and organizations are just now coming around to that. So if that could even be an encouragement to you guys to just know that you will feel that, and it is part of what a professional environment, but the needle's moving, and that's changing, and just create a community where you could find support outside, because it's easy to find community on campus. Maybe not easy, but you can find community on campus. You know, you have you guys resources even on this call, but when you go into the professional setting, you're on a little bit of an island. So, you know, maintain those connections with folks and have those chats with some folks to check in, and preserve your wellness.
Yes, thank you. And we have that was like a two-part question. I know I didn't tell you it was a two-part question, but we have like a quick second addition to that. And if Valerie, if you could click the slide one more time, it'll show up. But we want to know that in a lot of spaces, especially spaces that aren't predominantly BIPOC, sometimes ABC, African, Black, Caribbean people are asked to do more labor, or their labor isn't recognized in the same way that like maybe your non-Black counterparts are. So how do you advocate for yourself while not like popping off or rustling too many feathers with people?
That one is hard for me because I'm typically just a yes man. So like I said, in grad school, I was one of 2 Black girls, one of 3 Black people in my program. And I'm very outspoken. So I got tasked with doing a lot of stuff, especially after the whole George Floyd situation happened. But just throughout, I was all like, if you go on our website, my face is there because I'm a Black girl. So they want to show diversity. The videos, I'm always there. They're always asking me for, my time during interview processes so they can show other students that, oh yeah, we are diverse, even though it's just me. And on the one hand, it is very annoying, and it's, like they're not paying me to do all this extra stuff while, like my white counterparts aren't doing all this stuff. But on the other hand, I do want to, because I'm the only one, I do feel the pressure to do it, because it's like, okay, well, if not me, then who, So that's definitely something that I'm still navigating, trying to balance, and just know that you probably will be confronted with it, unfortunately. And, you know, there's power in your no, just like there's power in your yes. So don't feel pressure to always say yes to things.
I would also document all of the things that you're doing. And so if you feel as if you can't say no, but it's time for performance evaluations, to have your master list of all of the things that you did and all of the ways you contributed beyond your job description, so that it's right there, proof, and to come prepared to ask for more money, to negotiate, to ask for support to go to different conferences, to ask for a title change. And you have the data, and usually the data doesn't lie. So use that to back you if you don't feel comfortable just saying no or arguing without data, so to speak. But definitely document all of the things that you're doing.
Yes, to add to that, I definitely made up a position in my program. It's like, I don't know, I was the president of something, and I just made it up and I put it on my CV, and I like ran it through with the director, and I was like, listen, I'm doing all this stuff, so here's my new position, and I put it on my CV, and it looks great because it's the president of whatever it was. So definitely leverage it if you are doing it.
And then also, you might not want to stay in that job. And so if you're in the website and you're over here in this video, use that to market and brand yourself further so that you could build your influence outside of that organization.
Wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you to our panelists. This has just been such an enlightening, affirming, really confidence boosting experience. Y'all have provided so much information, wisdom, your experiences, and it's been invaluable, and we're all really, really grateful to have you here. I'd like to ask all of our participants to please use the reactions, flood the chat, like please express our shared gratitude that I know we all have, because this has been such an enlightening and really amazing experience. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much again. I'd like to ask Valerie if we can move on to the next slide, and you can click two more. Yes, there we go. Perfect. And we're going to set a poll to go live. And this is just going to be kind of like a reflection on y'all's experience today, and see if this helped you out in any of the questions that you had. So please fill out that poll. It should only take a minute or two.
I'll also add, after the poll is done, we will move on to the panelists' contact info, their emails. So also stay around. We're going to switch slides after this so you can copy those as well. And while y'all are filling out the polls, I also want to just thank the panelists for being here. This is my 5th year post-graduation from grad school, and I still learned so much from y'all in this conversation. And I was like, yes, I need to do that myself. I need to remind myself that. I see both of the 2 people I work with, Chanel and Melissa, smiling, because it's true. I feel like we're always constantly talking about, as Black women, how do we position ourselves in the work that we do and remain able to reflect on that and to grow from that. So I appreciate you all for being here and your advice and connecting back with UCSC and sharing a little bit about your experience. So I just want to say thank you so much. And thank you, Melissa, for moderating. As always, such an amazing moderator. It always brings a smile to my face watching you go. And just to also note, Melissa just graduated in 2020 and landed this job right after. And so if y'all ever have questions about that, please also reach out to Melissa. Sorry, I just offered you to support, but please reach out to Melissa. And also Chanel is a UCSC alum too. She's our ABC retention specialist, and you can always reach out to myself. All of our contact is on the ARC website. So thank you all for being here. And Valerie, do you mind moving to the next slide so we can show the email and contact information? Cool. So go ahead and screenshot, write it down, so that way you can continue the conversations and network. And Yeah. I'm going to leave this up for a little bit. We do have a slide after that, but I want to give time for folks to copy the information or screenshot it. All right, cool. And Valerie, if you can move over one more. We just want to share that upcoming event that we have. Melissa, do you want to share more information about it?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Rihanna. So Pachanga is our annual event that we do in collaboration with El Centro, the Chicanx and Latinx Student Resource Center, I'm sorry. It is going to be happening February 16th through the 18th. So that is the week of week 7. Keep in mind that Monday is a holiday. Y'all relax, take a beat, you know, but when we come back on Tuesday through Thursday, we're going to have a really awesome week of programs, really celebrating and highlighting Afro-Latinx culture. And the theme of Pachanga this year is very, very pertinent. It is healing. And so if you enjoy being in the Zoom space and talking, connecting, learning from others, please show up to Pachanga. And if you would like to make sure that you stay up to date with ARC's programs and resources and everything, here are all of our social medias in the chat for you. Thank you all so much again. It's been great.
Awesome. And just a reminder, this is recorded, so we can always share it out too if you want to reference back. So Taylor and Valerie, I don't know if you want to jump in and say any last words, but thank you all again for being here, and we'll stay on for a couple minutes if you have any lingering questions.